you're watching this, you are very familiar with Justin, his work at Saxum in Paso Robles. Um, Justin's wines were big pace setters and in a lot of way game changers for how the world viewed the wines of Paso Robles, its potential. And of course, now that potential is realized. It's a completely different world there now. The perceptions are very different. So, Justin, tell us a little, welcome again, and tell us a little bit about how you and your family got started there, and take it from there.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. And to start at the very beginning. So my folks bought this piece of property back in 1980. We were all living down in Encinitas, San Diego area. And my dad was a veterinarian down there. And after practicing for about 10 years, he got tired of that and decided he wanted to be a farmer, a grape grower. So they looked all over California, mainly North Coast, Napa area. But on their way up to look for properties up in Napa, they would always stop at the halfway point, which is Paso Robles. So they had a friend here, and so they kind of fell in love with the area and found a super cool piece of property that they bought on the west side of Paso Robles. So we're about 10 miles west of Paso. And at the time, there really wasn't any vineyards, so to speak, in this area. There was a couple old vineyards, old Zen vineyards, but that was about it in our area. Stanley Hoffman had done something earlier in the late 60s with Telestjeff, the Hoffman Mountain Ranch. So that was in the Adelaide area, but in this little area where we're at, there really wasn't too much. So it was kind of pure crazy speculation that grapes would grow well here, and they planted and started growing grapes. And
wasn't it mostly ranching at that point?
This whole area was exactly cattle and barley and safflower. Dry farm grains and cattle. So it wasn't a whole lot of other crops going on. And they wanted to just be grape growers, sell the grapes off, grow the grapes, sell them to other wineries. But my dad always loved making wine. He would keep, enough to make a couple barrels in his cellar.
So and he still does, right?
Yeah, he still does. So I grew up, helping out in the vineyard and then helping my dad in the cellar make a couple barrels of wine. And that's where I kind of learned the trade, working the family farm, so to speak. And then
you went on to school. You went to
I went to Cal Poly and studied actually environmental sciences there, botany, with plans of I was done on the farm. I wanted to do something else, but after being away for 5 years, kind of realized how cool it is here, how neat it was living on a farm and making wine. So I came back. Teamed up with one of my Cal Poly roommates, Matt Trevison, and I was managing this vineyard here, James Berry Vineyard, my folks' place, and he was working at Wild Horse Winery, doing cellar stuff, and we decided to pool our very meager resources and start making wine. So we started Lenny Coloto. That was back in '98, and I forget what we started with, something like 10, 15 barrels, not a whole lot, whatever we could scrape together. Did that for a few years, making the wine just like I had made it with my dad back in his little cellar. And after a few years, we split ways. Matt kept Lenny Coloto, and I started Saxum.
And was it the beginning, James Berry, wasn't it planted to Chardonnay? It
was all pretty much Chardonnay.
For Maison Deutz for their
exactly. So my dad planted it with speculation that it'd be used for champagne if they were coming in, but they ended up relocating, not putting the winery in here. So he had a bunch of Chardonnay, but we sold it around. People like John Munch at Adelaide were some of our first customers that would buy our Chardonnay. But it wasn't until the later '80s that John Albin, before he even bought his Edna Valley place, from Alban Vineyards. He approached my dad and said, this place is might be a pretty good area to grow Rhone varieties. And we were like, what? But yeah, so we put in some test blocks for him, and everybody was super impressed with how the fruit did. So from that point on, we've been more dedicated to the varieties that traditionally grow in the Rhone. And at this point, Jamesbury doesn't have any Chardonnay left.
But it wasn't that long ago, because you used to sell some to packs.
Yeah, exactly. I forget I think 11 was the last year that we pulled the Chard out. Actually, we grafted a lot of it over. So some of our vines that we have that are Grenache or Morvedra or Mataro or Graziano are on the original roots that the Chardonnay were on. So they're 40 years old, but yeah, they used to be Chardonnay.
And I also find it kind of interesting because I'm guessing I should know, you started probably with a bit more Syrah, and I think Paso, because of the whole Rhone movement, that John Alban kind of kicked up, and I guess Randall Graham to some extent, the California Rhone movement was really based on Syrah.
Yeah, those early days, it was all about Syrah, and in our first kind of little flyers that we put out for Saxum, it was like focused on Syrah was our heading or something. But we also planted for Wild Horse Vineyards, Ken Volk. He contracted us to plant about 20 acres for him, and he wanted Grenache and Mataro and Roussan. So those were our first plantings for Grenache was the big thing. So now at this point, we actually make more Grenache than anything else. The Syrah and Grenache are fairly close, but our focus has changed to being more inclusive. Grenache, Mataro, Syrah, and then we're doing Cinsault and Carignan and Petit Syrah. We've got a little bit of everything now, so we've diversified, but still kind of kept the focus on the Mediterranean varietals.
And that's kind of the, I couldn't really call it a trend, but that's been going on for about the last 6, 7, 8 years. I've noticed Grenache is really on the way up.
Yeah, it does so well here. It's like Syrah, you can tell Syrah does great all over the place, but Grenache is a variety that grows along the Mediterranean coast. It loves those hot days, less rainfall, really tolerates the heat and dryness great, as opposed to Syrah can struggle with that sometimes. So Grenache, you can tell it loves this area. So it's been a little bit more of a education for the consumer to get into Grenache, but as far as vineyard guy growing it, it loves to grow here.
And I think that's a big reason why, especially lately over the last few vintages, even though there's been heat and drought and whatnot, the wines really continue to show more and more, in general, more and more freshness, more red fruit than from back in the back in the teens. Yeah, when you definitely got a lot more black and blue kind of things.
Yeah, no, I mean it keeps its freshness. Really, this area is, we're always looking at other areas around the world when who's growing Grenache and what we can compare it to and whatnot. But it's like the Grenache that grows here is so unique in that it gets this ripeness and this richness, but it still holds this great acidity and this great freshness that really it's hard to find anywhere. I mean, I think like Priorat and some Chateauneufs have that, but it's definitely a rarity, I think, with Grenache.
No, I was going to say, to me, Priorat is about the only other place where you get that kind of vibrancy with richness, where you can get wines that are above 15%, but with this red fruit that sometimes when you taste it by itself almost comes off like Pinot.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, because it's like, you think it's more tied to the alcohol, but it's not. It's like if you have that acidity, you can have that freshness, and it's like, totally opens things up. It's like you can have balance at 15 plus, which is nice.
Well, obviously, a lot of that is thanks to your climate. How far are you from the ocean?
Yeah, we're only 10 miles off the ocean here. Central coast of California, we have a very cold ocean, even colder than North Coast California, thanks to the current. So it's like, a constant 50 some degree ocean here. And being that we're only 10 miles off and we're nestled in this kind of low spot in the Santa Lucia mountain range, that brings the cool air through. It's called the Templeton Gap. So it keeps us really moderated. So where we're at here in the Willow Creek district, we're usually about 10 degrees cooler than like the town of Paso Robles. So it keeps it nice and cool at night, which is, they talk about the diurnal fluctuations. So we have those crazy changes between, how cold it is at night and how hot it is in the day. We're pretty commonly in the 40s at night and in the 90s in the day. So we got this big swing. And the nights, the cold nights are really help to preserve the acidity and the freshness, and also our calcareous soils definitely do too. Let me swing you around.
Yep.
So yeah, it's kind of hard to see, but we're in the back of the cave, and that is our rock. So we're 65 feet underground right now. But you can see, even down here, I don't know, let's see if we can get a better angle here. You can see the yeah, you can see the way it's cut and shifted. So, it used to be flat. It was 10 million years ago. This was bottom of the ocean, which is pretty crazy. So we got lots of little shells and, silicious bits from the diatoms that were floating down. We also get, shark's teeth and shells and whale bones. Check this out. See that? Whale fossils.
Cool.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah, so that makes for a very alkaline soil. So very high pH in the soil, usually get into a pH around 8. And what that does too is really preserves the acidity in the grape. So it's kind of an inverse thing, kind of the higher your pH of the soil, the lower the pH, so the more acidity your grapes have. So it's nice having these soils. Whenever I'm planting a new vineyard, it's like what I look for is having those calcareous soils with the high pH.
And actually, I know in your area, they've found a whole entire whale fossils, right? I mean,
yeah, right. No, we get them quite often, and I'm not sure why. I mean, I found one 2 days ago in one of the vineyards I was walking, nice big fat vertebra. We get them all the time. I'm not sure exactly why, but it makes me think that this is probably, way back then, like maybe like a bay type situation where the whales would come in to calf, kind of like they do down in Baja now. So maybe there was a lot of whale activity, but I don't know. But yeah, for some reason there's bones all over the place. That's why we have our bone rock bottling, and our rock theme kind of starts with all these whale bones.
Right. And I think we have a picture here of your original cellar, which is 65 feet up.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. That was what we built 2002. And that's attached to my house. So my house is right next to this place. It was a little 1,900 square foot facility that we built out of cinder block. You can see, bought I think like 4 little stainless steel tanks and started making wine there. And use that facility until we built this place in 2015. So even though it was tiny, we were able to get everything done there. And the crazy part too is that back then in the very beginning, like 2004, so I'm there making all the Saxum, and I was also helping out Booker do all their wines, Terry Hogue do all their wines, Dinner do their wines, and Via Creek. All of us, our entire productions were in this little teeny place, which is kind of crazy.
Amazing. And I noticed you're also, and we're going to be able to take a little walk through your cellar here in a couple of minutes, but you were using barriques back then.
Yeah. So yeah,
Things have changed.
Exactly. Just normal, small little 225 or 228 liter barrels. with, only about half of it was new, various Coopers, but yeah. And then we've gradually moved to larger format for a lot of our wines. Just to,
I'd say you've kind of moved to crazy town, as we're going to see. Actually, this might be a good time. You want to take a
Sure.
quick walk?
Let's take you on the stroll. So you got me? We're mobile?
Yeah, you're there.
Cool. So yeah, this is our library. So we have a bunch of old steel dredge pipes that we cut up, welded together, and that holds all of our past vintages. So you can see we've got, our 2010s, whatnot, all stuffed in these tubes. So this is our little library back here where we keep all of our past vintages. And we've got our sevens, the big one that put us on the map, and then we come out and we've got our concrete amphora. So we started playing around with concrete in 2009. Like the 2007 vintage was pretty much all barriques. But 2009, I put some of our James Berry in we had a single concrete cylinder. Loved how that did. Loved the kind of the freshness and purity that came through with the concrete aging. So when we built this place, I got all these guys from Sonoma Cast Stone. I got to design the shape. You've probably seen eggs before. A lot of people use those concrete eggs. Problem I was having with the egg shape was that it's great for whites, but it stirs up the leaves so much that we never get any settling. And since we're doing reds in these, I had them pretty much flip an egg upside down. So the big part was on the top, small on the bottom, so the leaves would settle out a little bit better. We also did the trick with this as we were hogging out all of this cave, we had, tons and tons of rock coming out of here. So I had Sonoma concrete incorporate about 10% of our rock in the mix of the concrete here.
That's terroir, huh?
Yeah, exactly. So it's literally getting the terroir straight infused. A little bit of a cheat. And then so you can see we've got barrels kind of stretching in both directions, wrapping around. Right now we're in the middle of blending up our 2009s, our 19s. So we've got barrels kind of everywhere. It's in a little bit of state of disrepair here, but we've got things everywhere. But basically in the back of the cave is where everything ages out. But then you see our larger vessels. These are Foudras, so they're about 3,000, 3,200 liters. So basically just big, huge barrels. But we have them, like this one is our Paderewski vineyard. So every year we put Paderewski in here. So we just put the 19 blended up back in here. We've got G2 here. This will be James Berry. We're going to blend that up next week. And then we've got our Heartstone here. So every year, Heartstone goes in that, which ends up being most of the cuvee. But we've really liked playing with some of these larger formats. We've changed a little bit from back in the old days where we're more about tannin extraction. We've kind of backed off on our tannin extraction. And because of that, we don't need to put them in barrels to resolve those tannins. We're able to put them in these kind of bigger barrels because our tannins start off on the softer side. So it kind of preserves all those awesome aromatics. Here's our fermenters. There's Keaton. Hey, Keaton's driving by. So this is our fermentation room. So you can see we've got all these concrete fermenters on both sides of us. We love to use the concrete when we can for fermentation. Mainly for its awesome thermal dynamics. They're each 13,000 pounds of concrete. So when the fermentation starts to rip and heats up, it naturally just keeps them cool by absorbing that heat. And in the very end, when you want the ferment to stay warm, it's absorbed all that heat from fermentation and gives it back to them. So it's passively doing what we would used to have to use, glycol and stainless steel jacketed tanks to control the temperature. So these guys are awesome in that they're passive. We've tried to do as much as we can passively here at this facility. So there's no AC, everything is built into the mountain here. Stays a nice constant 56 degrees without any air conditioning, which is awesome.
And quick question for you. Somebody who's watching asked about the foudres. Are they neutral at this point, or how how old are they?
Like the first year you put them in, you definitely get a little bit of wood coming out of them. But yeah, after the second or third fill, there's really not any wood character coming from them. So they're keeping everything really.
And obviously the large volume of liquid compared to the actual wood helps.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So we've got big blenders. We've got right now, since we're blending up our 19s, this is our 2019 Bone Rock, different parcels. So we've got, this is going to get blended up and put into various vessels. Probably part of it will be one of those concrete amphoras in the back. But yeah, you can see right now it's in a couple different picks. So we've got our LBR, which is the lower bone rock, 28% stems. And the other big lot is the lower bone rock, which is 57% whole cluster. So those will kind of get blended together, and that will become our bone rock. We might throw in a barrel or so of Grenache too. We haven't completely decided on that. You can't really see, but our presses are back there. Basket presses, like the old school pneumatic presses. We feel that we don't get a very big yield off of our press, but all the material we get is really good. So we can keep it all.
And your father has a little tiny one that he uses, right?
Some wood fermenters. We like these little guys because they kind of start off the whole softening with the wood process early. So like lots that we think might need a little softening, bigger, more tannic varieties go in there for fermentation. We've got this is our music room. This is the other side is what we call our hookah lounge, where we kick back. There might be a hookah on that table at times, but not right now because of things. It's not.
Uh-oh. I think
and then we got the front side, which is. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's fine. That's good.
Gotcha. So this is the front of the building. That's my office over there. That's why it is so messy and cluttered with papers. That's Doggo sleeping underneath, and Donald Burns.
Good to see you again, Don.
So and then our wall of labels and whatnot. We actually made the table out of an old basket press and a foudre that we cut up. And then we've got our little lab. Hey guys.
Hey there.
Logan and Victor down there doing our work. And then then we roll out and we're in the vineyard. We're at Jamesbury Vineyard. So let me take you out. You still got connection here?
Yeah, it's going well.
Cool. So here we are. We're at Jamesbury Vineyard. That's my folks' house up there. They still live here on the property, up on the hilltop. And then on this other hill behind me over here is where I live with my family. I've got one kid in the house still, two that are off doing things college-wise or working in wineries. And Doggo wants to come out and say hi. What's up, dude? So
every winery needs a dog.
It's kind of hard. Sorry, spinning you around. Kind of hard to see, but yeah. So right back there is where the Templeton Gap is. So you can see right now, the vines are blowing in the breeze. It's about probably 78 degrees out right now, so nice and cool. Ocean breeze is kicking, which is typical day. Nice. Our growing season so far this year has been super cool, really mild. We got a decent rainfall. in our wintertime and our springtime. And no frost, no big heat spikes. The vines set great. So we've got our crews out there right now dropping crop, which is something that always super happy to do, you know, when we've got so much fruit that we decide we've got too much fruit and we need to drop some on the ground. Thinning the load, you know, Grenache. It's the one thing about Grenache is it doesn't always set great.
Right.
If it gets some wind or some rains,
We got a little bit of a,
half of our.
there we go.
Yeah. Can you hear me? We got it?
Yep. Now we're good.
Okay. Sorry. We're back.
So we obviously saw James Berry. Are you buying fruit from other people?
Yeah. So we still get, we probably have about 80 acres that go into Saxum, and about 40 some of that is James Berry, and then the other 30 some is purchase fruit. A good chunk of that.
Paderewski, obviously, which we saw in the food.
Yeah, Paderewski, G2, Heartstone Vineyard. They're our top three. Booker, of course, and Terry Hogue. Although unfortunately, Terry Hogue and Booker are both going to be going away. Terry Hogue pulled out his vines from virus, so we lost that block. And then kind of the same thing. Eric had some virus going on at his place, and he needs the fruit himself too. So even though I had some cool blocks there, I decided that he could take them back now. So both all of our vineyards that we get fruit from are ones that I've been with from the beginning. Helped them find the land, helped them plant it, and kind of in turn I get some fruit back.
And you still sell to a few people, right?
Yeah, we still sell to Via Creek and Carlisle, of course, Turtle Rock and Ledge. We sell a little bit to Anthony Yunt, Canero, and Closeline, and I think that is it.
Okay, type group.
Yeah.
And since we were talking about 2020, what's going on there? Can we kind of go back a few vintages and like 19? What's your take on?
19s are looking really good. Digging them, chasing through everything right now as we're blending, and there's some super cool wines there. It was nice rainfall, good season, very late season. Everything was stacked in the very end, late October. We kind of rushed to pick everything just because it was at the end of the season. But everything is super nice. Stoked on it. 18 classic, 17 marked by a hotter summer and a higher rainfall. They're a little more open. 16s and 18s though are definitely a little more structured and age-worthy. But 17s are super open and pretty. I think 19 is gonna lie right now in my head. It's like in between the 17s and the 18s and 16s, in that it's open and pretty and generous, but it's also got this great density to it. It's hard to peg it at this point, because it's like, guessing what a kid's going to be like when they grow up. But right now it shows a lot of potential. I'm pretty
I'm saying usually when you try and make that guess, you're wrong. As I've learned. And somebody else had a quick question for the blocks or the fruit that you sell off to other people. Are they involved with the farming at all? Is it all you?
They pretty much, leave it up to us. But they, like Mike Officer, he comes by, probably 4 times a year, checks on things, makes sure, everything's right, fruit load or whatnot. But
he's pretty detail oriented.
Yeah, he is. He's great to work with. He knows what he wants. Same with Closeline. Guillaume's out here all the time, checking on things. But it's our final kind of say. But since it's the whole blocks are going to them, I let them have say. You want me to drop more crop, I'll drop more crop. You want me to keep it, I'll keep it. So it's up to them, but we're doing the farming.
Okay, cool. And speaking of 2018, we can go back and forth now, maybe try a few wines.
Yeah. Did you pop the 18 white yet?
Yeah, it's pretty
Nice.
crazy.
Yeah. So this is our second white. We released the 17 already. But yeah, I've always wanted to do a white from here. In our old facility, it was so small, it just wasn't set up for it. But since we got our new fancy place, but there's a lot of pressure. It's like I want something to be good.
And it's 66% Grenache Blanc, 28% Roussanne.
Yeah, so we've always had the Roussanne here. But to me, often by itself, it could be too heavy, too waxy, too thick by itself. I wanted something with some bright acidity like Grenache Blanc. So we planted the Grenache Blanc actually in the last block of Chardonnay that we pulled out. It was a nice east face. We put in the Grenache Blanc, and really happy with what that brings to the party. Doing it definitely in a more serious style, where it's mainly barrel aged, left on its lees the whole time, but we're using larger barrels. So I took you by them, I didn't point them out. Big 600 liter demi-muise. So we got some used ones that came from Dagenau. So they brought them all the way over from France, just so we have a little neutral oak too. But they're these big 600 liters, but they do add a little bit of softness and roundness, that bit of oak touch, and we're able to leave them on the lees the whole time. And so this wine was 19 months, never sulfured until bottling. So we left it on its lees, unsulfured for that full 19 months, and then combined them and sulfured them and bottled it. So yeah, this hasn't been released yet, but I'm pretty stoked. I'm trying to shoot for that balance between opulence and richness, but brightness and lift.
No, and the 6% of Chenin has got to help that.
Yeah, I threw that in the very base of the Grenache Blanc. I love a good California Chenin, or any Chenin to me, but just a touch of it. But yeah, so we're trying for that. I love California Chardonnays that have that richness and that acidity, or Burgundies. We drink a lot of them, so we want to do something that wasn't really your typical Rhone white. Was made using Rhone varieties, but doing it more like a classic rich Burgundy.
Yeah, it definitely has tension, but it's tense on a large frame.
Yeah, we bought a closed membrane press just for this. So it sees, pretty much it goes pressed, no skin contact, which is, I know, not the cool thing to do right now, but I wanted to do more classic, so no skin contact, press straight to barrel, goes in dirty and stays that way the whole way through. And then it kind of gets its slow oxidation through that 19 months of hanging out with no SO2. So it gets that kind of what they call death and resurrection, where you let it get a little bit of oxidation, kind of stabilizes, precipitates out that kind of brownness. And then it kind of goes through that phase. And then when you bring it back to life, adding your SO2 before bottling it, totally lifts it back up out of the grave, so to speak. And then it's rock solid and stable at that point.
I was going to say, now that you're 50 years old, I think you're a little too old to be doing skin contact wine. That's for your kids.
I'll probably get some Josh dirty jokes in here.
No, that's about as bad as it'll get. And you had some Petit Manseng going for a while.
We did. And it was too much acidity. I planted it originally on the top where it was super calcareous, because I was worried I wouldn't have enough acidity in the Grenache Blanc. But the Manseng had so much acid. We're picking it was 2.9 pH with 0.9 TA, and that was at 30 bricks, and it was like, we can't do anything with this. I see why it makes such a great dessert wine, because it holds its acid so well that you can pick it really sweet and it's still got acid. But it was so we did, in the beginning, we tried a little bit, and last year we're like, all right, it's out of here.
Just go back real quick. You mentioned the freshness and the acidity of Grenache Blanc. which I find to be a really interesting subject because there's such a stereotype, I think, around that variety that's based on, a lot of it's old books, right? I mean, the books that we all read,
Yeah.
and Grenache Blanc really was pretty much exclusive to Chateauneuf du Pape. And the way they made it back then was they picked it usually after the reds, and they didn't treat it nicely because it was an afterthought. And I, at least for me, I didn't really know about it and its potential for freshness until we started to see what was coming out of really out of Terra Alta and Priorat.
Yeah, totally. No, I think it's got huge potential. Yeah, it's, we're a warm area. So it's like, something like Chardonnay is not going to work here. But yeah, you got something like Grenache Blanc, and it keeps that freshness and that brightness and the acidity. You can get the richness because of our warm climate and the ripeness. But yeah, having that brightness is something that it's hard to find anywhere but Grenache Blanc.
And any anticipation? Are you planting any more white grapes, or are you kind of staying put?
Good for now. Our neighbors have had some great success with Claret. I think that does well. It'd probably do great here, but right now we're all planted out at Jamesbury, so we're gonna have to stick with this recipe for now.
That's not too bad. It's a good off to a fun start. What do you I mean, obviously you're kind of shooting in the dark here. What do you think this will do with aging?
Being that we did the whole let it oxidize in barrel thing, I think it's going to be around for the long haul. It's got that tannin and that structure and that tension that to me makes me think it's going to go a long time. But yeah, this is it. This is the beginning. This is pretty much ground zero. So it's all brand new from here. But Alan, what do you think? You're the expert. I think it's going to age a bit, but what do you think?
I think it has the tension to.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I should say on the other hand, or conversely, it's very, very rich. There's no problem drinking this now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot going on. The main thing that I'm noticing is the texture of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's creamy, but at the same time, it's chewy. I mean, it's a lot of paradoxes, right? I mean, it's rich, but it's lively.
Yeah.
It's round, but it's also got tooth to it.
Yeah.
I mean, you
get that Grenache tannin, the kind of like chalky tannin that frames it all.
Yeah, that's a very interesting. How much of this did you make?
Not a lot. A few hundred cases.
Okay.
Yeah, not much.
So let's move to a few red wines.
All right, what are we trying first?
Very young one, 2016 Hex.
Sorry, I'm trying to toss my wine there. 16 Hex.
That is one young wine.
Yeah. So I wanted to do and a young wine, a medium wine, and an older wine. Hex. This was our first release of Hex. We're just now are releasing our 17 version, but this is the 16. Hex is built around our oldest block of Grenache here at Jamesbury Vineyard, a hilltop south exposure that was on the top of that hill up there as we were walking around in front of the winery. So 40-year-old root system. It gets that bask in that sun all day long. It makes for a very structured, dense, rich Grenache. It used to go into Jamesbury. But it kind of was conflicting in that most of the Jamesbury is more east or north Grenache slopes, which are more kind of pretty and aromatic and lifted in red fruit. And this was always much more structure and brawny. And I always thought it would benefit from an extra year in barrel to kind of soften those burly tannins up. So we decided to start pulling out that bit. Kind of built a little cuvee around it with a block that's similar at G2 Vineyard, and put those together and put them in barrel for an extra season. So it sees about 31 months, mix of concrete and 300, 400 liter barrels. But it helped absolve those bigger tannins, but it still makes for a very dense, chewy wine.
Well, and you also added, it's what's 56% Grenache, but the other 44% are Petit Syrah,
The big boys.
Mataro.
Even some Tempranillo in there. They were definitely built it with more, structured, tannic grip to it. With kind of showing the dark side, so to speak, of our terroir.
And is this Mataro? Is it Graciano?
This 16, it would be the real Mataro.
Okay.
When we, I think in 16, Graziano was labeled Graziano, and Mataro was labeled Mataro.
And what year was that? The confusion?
I think it was. It must have been. It was 18 when we were bottling these, so I guess it was probably around 17, 18. But we first saw it when we put in a block in 2012, and we got the wood from our local nursery, Sunridge Nursery, and they were like, I wanted to graft over our last bit of Chardonnay to some Mourvedre and some Monastrell, the Spanish version of Mourvedre or Mataro, and so we planted this one block. We grafted over, and half of it was an Alban clone of Mourvedre, and the other half was this Monastrell clone. And as soon as it budded out, we're like, this is completely different. And they're like, oh, no, we DNA'd it. It's from Spain. It looks different, but it's not. It's the same thing. And, so we kind of went on with it, but never really totally bought into the fact that it was Mourvedre. And finally, I was like, this doesn't make any sense. And that's when, DNA'd it and found out that all of the Monastrell that had come into California in the last 8 years was actually Graziano. But we love it. We love it. We've actually planted, that young block right out and behind me is more Graziano. It does great here. It's like it grows like Mourvedre, upright, nice clusters, does well in head train, but it's got better acidity, more kind of structure and grip to it. Love it as a blender. Really digging it as a counterpart to Syrah.
So it's a happy accident.
Yeah, it's like you'll see like our Bone Rock and our Broken Stones have more and more Graziano because it does so well balance out with the Syrah.
Well, it's a lot of people are coming to the conclusion that it originated down in Jerez.
Mm-hmm.
And it's planted all over down there. They call it Tinto de Cadiz.
Yeah.
And the soil down there is a lot like yours.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's Spain's so crazy because they've been growing grapes for so long there that there isn't a great kind of like here. It's like we're all about the name. It's like that's what we grow. We grow it. We've been growing it here for thousands of years, and we don't really care what you call it. This is what we grow. This is what we call it. And we're trying to, compartmentalize everything here and put tags on it and names on it. And it's like they're like whatever, So it's like.
Well, you definitely see that. You definitely see that in central Spain, where they still, in Ribera and Toro, they still call it Tinto de Toro.
Yeah, and like I'm sure in every town it has it, and they call it something different. It's like, it does great. It does great in these arid climates. Holds its acid so well. Has this great, bright magenta color. No, we dig it, for sure.
Gonna move. You said into a middle-aged wine. Sort of like you and me. So 2011 Broken Stones.
I forgot my dump bucket, so I have to go throw it over there on the rocks. So 2011.
It's one way to keep your yeast cultures going down there.
Exactly. This whole wall here is our inoculation for everything. It's got so much yeast coming off of this wall, and it's like we don't need to inoculate anything in the cellar, just wafting through. But 11, I want to revisit 11 with you because it was such a unique vintage, such a cool
season for us. You know, it wasn't a single day over 100 degrees all season long. And it definitely made for unique wines for us. Especially, I think the Syrahs were really successful in that they have that little more kind of meaty, savory, spicy side to them that we often don't get in a warmer or hotter year. So I thought it'd be fun to revisit Broken Stones 2011. Back when we called it Mourvedre, and there's a touch of Petit Syrah in there too. But yeah, the bulk of it's been Syrah.
But 78% Syrah.
Oh, thank you, sir. I got a dump bucket now.
Yeah, it's good to have servants.
Yes. My Oompa Loompas.
Don't tell them that. Man, the Syrah is really jumping out.
Yeah.
In that kind of olive way.
Yeah, all black tapenade and charred meat and soy sauce.
Was this did you use whole clusters in here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, whole cluster in 11 was super successful. So we did as much as we could back then.
I mean, you can definitely smell the clusters, the spice of the clusters.
Yeah, the spice coming off of it, the black pepper stuff. Still fresh and bright. Still got a big tannic grip. Still needs some more time.
A lot of floral things going on too.
Yeah, little pastis.
Licorice?
Lavender type stuff.
Lavender? Yeah.
Some Garrigue. Or we
It's definitely very. No, Garrigue is Grenache.
This is California Chaparral. Little bay leaf.
Yeah, someday I'm going to have to taste a Chateau de Pop, and in the notes say it has a suggestion of Chaparral.
California Chaparral.
Yeah, I mean, people say Garrigue here, so why not?
I know. I'm telling you, totally get away from that. Like, I'm being so damn French.
And so this is 9 years old, and it's definitely picked up. It's definitely picked up some aromatic. It's picked up some bouquet, right? I mean, that starts starting to emerge.
On its.
Big ascent. Yeah, I'd say it more like that. I mean, it's.
Yeah.
I mean, it's there, but wow, it's got a long way to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fun. Yeah.
It's also very round. It's very round.
Mm-hmm. It's round, but it's still grippy, still tannic.
See, I find the tannins to be working really nicely with the fruit.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, I don't find them out of place, but I'm surprised about the structure that's still there. It's nice, good framework.
I mean, 9 years old, it doesn't taste like that.
Mm-hmm. Cool, huh? I know. It's like when we first started out, everyone was like, "Oh, these big wines, they're not going to age. They may taste good now, but 2 or 3 years, they're just going to fall apart because their alcohols are too high and they're just going to fall apart." But now it's like we still haven't got to a point where our first wines have started to go on that downhill. They're still like getting better and better. I think on the first wines we made, they're better than they were last year. So yeah, they got great aging potential.
Well, I mean, to me, it seems like when you start with that incredible density of fruit, when they get old in aging, I would think it was like undoing an onion, right? You're basically peeling away the layers until you get down to, the germ.
Yeah.
Well, if you start off with an onion that's the size of a basketball, in terms of fruit, it takes a long time you can lose a lot of layers before it craps out.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
And here, I mean, there's just so much fruit that it's hard for me to almost to imagine when this wine will go to that, like a leafy stage.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Right? Which is sort of like the final, that's the last gasp.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to imagine this thing turning leafy.
Yeah, totally agree. Uh-huh.
I mean, I wonder when it's even going to pick up any of the vegetable stuff like tobacco, the more herbal, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's fun. It's fun to figure that out. Hopefully.
Somebody was somebody's asking here, said that she's still loving the 2005s and 4s.
Yeah.
And said was there a little bit of spritz in some of those wines?
04 was our cursed vintage. And we had some weird things go on with the 04. There was some Brett going on in 04. There was just some weird stuff. I'd rather forget that vintage.
Okay, sorry. It wasn't me. It was a subscriber.
Some of them are beautiful and you're like, wow, that's awesome. And then you open another bottle and it's like weird. And there's, like a spritz. And then you open another one and you're like, whoa, that one's got Brett. So sorry about those. And thank you for sticking with me, those that have purchased the 04s and have found them really weird, because starting in 05, it's just 04, even 03 and below and 05 on, they're super clean. But the 04s had some weird shit going on.
It happens. You were young.
It was a good learning experience, It was like
trial by fire is not always a bad thing.
Yeah, and it slapped me a little bit. It was good, because kind of like 2 and 3, I was like pushing kind of the boundaries of how ripe I can get it and how well I can ferment it through. And then 04, I like pushed it a little too much, and it was like I picked them too ripe, and we had stuck fermentations, and that was, I think, the beginning of all the problems. We had stuck fermentations and some residual sugar in some, and that's what caused the secondaries to go off. And I was like, so we backed. That was like the peak of and then 04, we're like, oh no.
Okay, all right.
We don't need to get any riper than that. So we started backing off with our ripeness, and and then I think I consider like 05 our first vintage of like really kind of hitting our stride, knowing like what we wanted to do and how to do it. And from 5 on out was more fine tuning as opposed to, kind of wild, pedal to the metal kind of squirreling out, and then it's like, okay, now we're straight. Now we got it going. So
I was about to say, it sounds like, when you get your driver's license when you're 16,
exactly.
you say, how fast does this car go?
You
then you either get a nasty speeding ticket or you feel the rear end start to lift up, and you say, all right, I found the limit.
So that was the peak for us.
So moving back actually 4 more years, 2007.
So 07.
James Berry.
So what was the first vintage that you tasted with us?
First time I came out to visit you was
before this. Was it like the 06 or 05s?
No, I came out to visit you in 2004.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, fall of 2004.
Okay. So
I would have tasted 03 barrels.
So you must have got the good 04s, not the ones that were freaking out.
They didn't have time. No, you know what it was? It was like you said. It's like they were little kids.
Yeah,
and they were, and they didn't have. Like I'll tell my daughters that I say, I don't know what happened. When did you turn ready?
So the 07 would be fun to pop. That's kind of the wine that exploded us when it got 100 points from Mr. Parker himself. It got wine of the year from Spectator. It was the highest rated wine from you ever. So this 07 kind of put us on the map, so to speak. And the big change that we had in 07 versus 06 was that up until 06, James Berry was Syrah based. And we were also doing our Rocket Block, which was all Grenache. And in 07, we were about to bottle it that way again when we tried putting the Grenache Rocket Block into the James Berry, pushed it over to being Grenache based, but definitely being the trifecta of Grenache, Mourvedre, and Syrah. And it was like, oh, this is way better than either one was by itself. So from that point on, 07, James Berry's been Grenache based, Grenache focused.
As somebody just asked a quick question. In 2008, did you try to replicate the 2007? You probably couldn't.
Of course not. Yeah, I would if I had better business sense, but no, I'm always trying to make things better. By the time it got all those accolades was the 2009 vintage, and the 2009 vintage is the first vintage that we switched to doing a bunch of Grenache and concrete, like I mentioned earlier. So by the time the 07 got us big, we had already changed our whole program of James Berry to being partially Grenache aged. And I must say that you like the 09 better than you even like the 07. So I think it was a good decision that we brought in that concrete to keep it fresh. You know, the 07, I think it's great. I love it still, but I like the newer ones that we're doing that do have that little more focus of the Grenache purity, as opposed to this was all, you know, barrique aged.
It's more grown up like you. More refined.
Refined.
We got just a couple more minutes here, and I wanted to put up a couple of photos. There's we got some photos from 02 of your well, one of your first. That was your second vintage, right?
Yeah, it was actually on the very first crush at our new facility. The first two vintages were custom crush. Yes, that's me on the ladder with my lucky Tempier shirt, and bent over the crusher there with a moving auger that's probably about to take both of our feet off. That's Terry Hogue. And then down at the bottom there, that's Eric Jensen talking to Ron Dinner, explaining the meaning of life probably to him. But yeah, that was us in the very beginning.
Oh, I think Eric is trying to explain the meaning of life to Ron.
Yeah. No, you got to understand here. Constellation. Yeah, that was the very beginning. Yeah, those are the good old days. No, not even any shade out there. We're crushing in probably 100-degree heat next to that concrete wall. It was yeah, that was good times. It was good times though. It was like the yeah, all of us there. It was fun. It was a nice shared. You know, we're all able to bounce ideas off each other and try new stuff. Oh, and there's like, yeah, that's my son Colin and my daughter Olivia and my wife Heather cleaning out a tank way back then. Colin has a ninja stick that he was probably stabbing some grapes with. But yeah.
And are they working? You said they're working in wine now, or are they?
Yeah, Colin's working up in Santa Cruz. His girlfriend is going to school there, so he was with us last year, but he got a job working up with Ryan Sturm up in Santa Cruz while his girlfriend Ray finishes her degree, and then Olivia is now going to Lewis and Clark up in Portland. And yeah, hopefully someday they'll come back and get in the wine business. We'll see, and continue it going. I love the idea of it being multi-generational, you know, and being able to pass it on to your kids when you're done, because it's a.
Yeah, because I mean, I guess in your neck of the woods, and actually in a lot of California in general, a lot of the New World, honestly, the West Coast, as far as multi-generations, you know, you have Jason Led up in Oregon. And you have Mike Etzel and Mikey Etzel. Yep. You have Jim Arterberry, Arterberry Marsh. Around you. You? Who else?
I mean, I think there's a lot, you know, seeing just, you know, there not a lot, but yeah, most everybody's, yeah, starting up new. And it seems like, unfortunately, most of them, once they do get successful, they cash out, as opposed to, you know, keeping it in the family and continuing it, which, you know, is kind of sad because you lose that, you know, lineage of it being about the house and the vineyard. And I think it's fun when you're looking at like old world estates where they've been doing it for like, you know, 12, 13 generations to be able to.
Yeah, crazy, right?
Oh, who was making this one? You know, this was the grandfather or the father or the son, you know, and see how they've kind of changed and each kind of doing their own interpretation of the land. And I think
it's like, was it Jean-Luc, Jean-Pierre, Jean-Marie, Jean-Baptiste?
Jean was that from Chaves. I know.
Yeah, right.
So
well, I hope that the more people out there will do that.
Yeah.
You know, it's nice. I always think it's nice when you have that kind of continuity. It's cool. It just it does give a nice feel to it. I think, it just adds an extra layer of interest.
Yeah, totally. Where it's more about, it's not so much about the winemaker, it's more about the estate, which is definitely a different perspective than most West Coast people have on it,
Well, it's much more of that than a job.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. All right. Witching hour.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. I really, I wish I could be there with you all.
Yeah. When are you coming out?
You have to ask the man upstairs or the man down in Washington.
No, we did do some Zoom tastings. It's kind of strange, If you want us to send you some wine, we'll get together and do it like this, where you can taste the new vintage. But
well, that should get really interesting around hour 2.
Yeah. Well, we miss you. We miss everybody. It's like
it's thrown a big wrench into things. Anyway,
great.
Thanks again, and I'll be in touch. And good luck with 2020. And thanks for that really cool tour of the cellar.
Yeah.
That's the first time we've done something like that, and I thought that was very, very cool. Thanks for coming up with the idea.
Those 3 people that have watched it all the way through, we thank you too.
All 3 of you. A little more than that. All right, Justin. Thank you again.
All right. Cheers, guys. Take care.